Today we're gonna build a MisterCraft kit, the Hawker Hurricane Mark 1 in 1:72 scale. The kit is okay-ish. The instructions are simple to follow. Color schemes proposed are also okay and detailed, with color codes and decal placement. But we won't use the British RAF markings, we will use a Romanian Royal Air Force. It has raised panels, but some nice details, which made it okay for this project. The clear parts are also okay, as you can observe. Let's start the assembly. We begin with cutting out the pieces from the sprue. There aren't too many pieces, so I will cut them all and prepare them for assembly. I'm sorry for the white balance shifting, I shouldn't let the camera on auto, lesson learned. First, I build the interior. It isn't very complicated, only a few parts make it up. Then, I glue the propeller. After that, it was the turn for the oil radiator. I use Revol Contactor Professional for this, it's working well with this plastic. I glue the upper parts of the wings. The fitting is okay, I've seen worse. I let it cure for a few hours or so. After the glue is cured, I use dissolved putty to fill the gaps. After the putty is dried, next day, I sand it until a seamless surface is accomplished. I use wet sandpaper to reduce the dust. Then I clean it up with a paper towel. The propeller is the first to be painted. I start with black primer from Vallejo. Using the same primer, I spray in thin layers over the instrument panel. The interior walls of the cockpit receive the same treatment. The interior was painted with interior green from Hadaka. I had some PE British belts and I used them, although they won't be visible, unfortunately. The final assembly of the interior is a little bit tricky. You have to align the instrument panel between the two fuselage parts, as you can see in the footage. To glue it, I use a VMS styrene cement fast. I use mask tape to hold the fuselage together. The glue for this was Tamiya extra thin cement. I let it cure for a few hours, then I glue the wings and the fuselage together. Then I glued the horizontal stabilizers. Again, as you can see, I use masking tape to keep the fuselage and wings together until the glue is fully cured. Once again, the gap filler of choice was Mr. Color Dissolved Putty. Once dried and sanded, I begin to assemble the final details of the fuselage. The oil radiator I painted earlier with aluminum color from Vallejo Metal series. It was prepared for chipping also, with a thin layer of Vallejo chipping fluid. Next I glued the canopy in a closed position. I should leave it open, pity for the interior details that will not be visible. I masked the propeller with VMS masking fluid. It wasn't a great idea because it will be a little harder to peel it off. It's time for the paint. In order to do that, I washed the entire surface of the plane with soapy water. Then black primer from Vallejo was applied. I emphasized some surfaces with Vallejo Air White to break the monotony of the final colored result. My color scheme for this plane was one of 12 of the Romanian Hurricanes that have been imported before World War II started, the plane flown by Captain Aviator Emil Georgescu, the squadron commander of Fighter Squadron 53. We find this particular fighter, one yellow, in Mamaia Constanța Aerodrome back in 1941. The Romanians have used this squadron of Hurricanes in the beginning of the Bessarabia campaign, from June to July 1941. The lack of spare parts quickly became a major problem for Romanian Hurricanes, and after more IR-80s became available in late 1942 and early 1943, they were taken out of active duty. After priming, I observed some small inadvertent surface over the engine top, so I had to sand it. After that, some surface details had to be rescribed. I used a razor saw and an engraving tool. Then I covered, again, the working area with primer. After that, I sprayed Vallejo Metal Color aluminum on the lower surface. I sprayed a thin layer of chipping fluid on the lower surface of the wings. The next step was to cover the starboard wing with Tamiya White X2. And the port wing with black XF1. Thin layers of paint were used to slowly cover the entire surface. The color scheme of the Romanian Hurricanes was British to a point. Yellow engine cover, back fuselage stripe and wingtips was applied after Romania joined Axis forces to reclaim lost territories in the east. The camouflage consists of two colors, RAL 6003 and RAL 7000, or dark green and dark earth, standard RAF colors. I used ammo by MiG Colors Olive Grown Option 2 and Dunkel Braun. I thinned the paints with VMS acrylic thinner. The paint was sprayed freehand, without any mask for the camo pattern. I used a 0.2mm nozzle aerograph at a lower pressure, under 15 psi. When I applied the second color, I was a little bit more careful, with even a lower pressure than before, to be more precise. I build up the pattern slowly, in uneven layers to simulate wear. Then I masked the plane for the yellow paint. I should have applied a coat of white or neutral grey before, it would have been much easier to apply the yellow paint. On the lower surface, it was easier because of the base aluminum paint. The wingtips were easier to paint on the white side, harder on the darker side. After the fuselage stripe, I painted the Romanian tricolour on the vertical stabilizer. Yellow was first, because I had previously used it, then blue from Tamiya, and red from MisterCraft. After the paint was dried, I started the chipping process. First I moistened the target surface with tap water. Then I used a stiff brush to scratch the surface. And a toothpick to finish the details. I chipped the wheel wells margins, the small air intake for the supercharger and the wing edges. Then I started to paint the details, like the back wheel. Wing landing light, it should have two, one for each wing, but there was only one with the kit. The tail navigation light, and wingtips lights, all with Vallejo metal color aluminum as a base. I painted the engine exhaust with a mix of dark earth and gunmetal in a 7:3 proportion. The gun barrels were painted with gunmetal from Vallejo premium colors. As I said previously, it was a mistake that I masked the propeller with masking fluid. It has solidified thick and it was a pain to remove. After a careful process, I succeeded. I didn't have decals for number markings, so I used a mask. The tail color for the number was yellow, then inverted on the wings, white for black and black for white. The main wheels were painted in aluminum base and black rubber tires. After I sealed the whole model with satin varnish, I started to apply the decals. The 9th Group of Fighter Aviation adopted this Mickey Mouse emblem as their unit insignia. The emblem itself is a parody of St. George killing the dragon. The fuselage cross of King Michael I was put in place next. The decals were a little bit thick and I had to apply a lot of softener. The panel wash was next. Unfortunately, as I previously stated, the mold was using raised panels, so there were a few places that I could apply the wash. The choice for this was enamel Tamiya brown panel line wash. I had some limited success with this operation on ailerons and flaps. And emphasizing, a little, the oil radiator. The excess wash was removed with odorless thinner from Ammo by MiG. I was sealing the entire model with matte varnish from VMS and, after letting it curing, sanding the surface to level the imperfections. This process was completed using a sanding sponge from Tamiya 3000 grit for finishing surfaces. Next I use Ammo by MiG shader, ash black, to simulate shell evacuation smoke. Engine exhaust smoke. And gun barrel smoke. Next, I glue and place the landing gear. I used VMS styrene cement fast for this. I glue the wheel bay doors next, using the same glue. The last details to be glued was the antenna cable. I used CA glue and rigging wire from Ammo by MiG. The process requires some practice, but the result is worth it. I apply enamel dust effect from Ammo to the wheels and wheel wells doors. Then some speckling to the lower surfaces. I remove the excess with odorless enamel thinner. I blend in some speckles. Then I uniformize the wheels dust. Here I cut the transparent cover of the single landing light from the wing. Then dry fitting it, sanding it a little to make it fit. The last details to be applied was some gloss varnish on the navigation lights to simulate glass. Now you can enjoy the final result. I hope you like it. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And also, please subscribe and hit that bell button in order to be announced when I release the next videos. See you next time.